Have you ever felt as if something is approaching? You can't see it, you can't name it, but in the corners of your thoughts, there's a quiet knock, not on a door of your home, but on the doorway of your soul. Pauses, breathing slowly. Tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. A man is arriving. No, not a stranger with a name or a face you know. He may not look how you expect. He may not speak in words you understand, but his presence, it will move you. And here's the truth. Most people miss. Sometimes the most important people in your life aren't the ones who stay forever, but the ones who appear at exactly the right time and hand you a decision. Not a gift, not a punishment, but a decision. Let me tell you something from my early days on the path. When I was much younger, still caught in the tides of my own ego, I met a traveler. He had kind eyes, but they were tired. He carried nothing but a satchel. He came into the monastery unannounced. We didn't know who he was or where he came from, but he said something I've never forgotten. He looked at me and said, "The difference between a lost man and a wise one is that the wise one knows when he's reached a crossroad." I was confused. I asked, "How do you know when it's a crossroad?" He smiled and said, "Because something unexpected arrives, and your soul can't ignore it." Pauses. That was the moment. I didn't know it then, but that man, he was my crossroad. And now I tell you this because tomorrow, someone is coming for you. You may meet them in a store, or maybe on your phone screen. Maybe they say something that sounds simple, but it touches a part of you that's been asleep. And when that happens, pause. Don't rush past it. Too often, we are so busy being busy that we miss the moments designed to wake us up. You know, when I first began practicing mindfulness, I thought the biggest challenge would be the silence. But no, it was the urgency I had built inside me. To constantly be somewhere else, to be someone else. To prove something to others, even when no one was watching. But mindfulness taught me something powerful. You don't meet people by accident. You meet them because your soul is ready to listen. And if someone is arriving tomorrow, maybe the question isn't who they are. Maybe the question is, what have you been avoiding that they've come to remind you of? Let me offer you a question. One I asked myself when I was your age. If you met someone tomorrow who could change your entire life, would you recognize them? Because the truth is, they don't always look like saviors. They might look like a problem, a conversation you didn't want to have, a message you didn't expect, a challenge that shakes your comfort. But that is how the soul knocks. And every knock is sacred. Every knock is a chance to choose again, to return, to yourself, to remember what matters, to align with what you know, but keep forgetting. Now, let me ask you something else. When was the last time you made a decision you didn't understand, but deep inside, it felt like the right thing to do? That's the kind of decision that may be arriving tomorrow. A choice not for logic, but for alignment, not for safety, but for truth. So, today, before tomorrow comes, I ask you to sit with yourself, in silence, in stillness, and listen. Because when he arrives, when that decision knocks, you'll want to be present. And if you're awake, even slightly, you will recognize that moment for what it truly is, a divine appointment. This is only the beginning of the story. We haven't yet spoken of the lessons he brings, the fears he may awaken, or the light he will leave behind. But I will tell you, that arrival, it will leave you changed. And that's why we must speak again. To continue this story and uncover the deeper meaning of the visitor's arrival, let us walk the path together, step by step. You see, not every visitor in life knocks with their hands. Some arrive through the ripple of an unexpected message, a quiet glance from a stranger, or a moment that humbles your heart. And sometimes they bring something we don't think we're ready to carry: truth. But let me share with you what I've learned. Truth doesn't ask for your readiness, it asks for your honesty. Many years ago, I met a woman who came to our temple asking questions about pain. She had lost someone suddenly, and she wasn't looking for answers. She was searching for permission. Permission to grieve, permission to feel, permission to not be okay. She asked me, "Why did this happen to me?" And I didn't answer right away, because sometimes silence is more healing than words. Instead, I poured her a cup of tea. And when I handed it to her, I said, "This tea was once water. The fire changed it, but it didn't destroy it. It only brought out the flavor hidden within." She stared at her cup, and tears fell silently into it. That day, I watched her soul awaken, because pain had brought her to a decision, to open her heart or close it forever, and she chose to open. Now I ask you, when pain arrives, as it sometimes does in the shape of a person or an ending or a new beginning, do you brace yourself to resist, or do you breathe and ask, "What is this moment trying to show me?" Because every arrival is an invitation, an opportunity to remember a version of yourself that's been hidden beneath years of forgetting. And I believe that the man who's arriving tomorrow is not just a person. He is a moment, a reflection, a chapter turning in your life. You may not realize it yet. You may pass him on the street or scroll past his face. But the resonance, it will reach you. It always does, because souls recognize what the eyes cannot. Let me ask you something personal. What is the decision that you've been postponing? The one you whisper about only when no one is listening? Is it a conversation you've avoided? A boundary you've been afraid to set? A dream you've convinced yourself is too late to follow? That decision, the one you've buried under excuses and fear, that's the one he brings to your table, not to force you, not to shame you, but to remind you that life is shaped not by what happens to you, but by how bravely you decide to show up in it. Let me tell you what I know from years of listening to people cry, heal, break, and rebuild. Every life turns at the pivot of a single moment, and those moments are rarely loud. They whisper, they wait, they honor your timing, but they don't wait forever. That's why you're hearing this now. Why this conversation found you? Because you already know something is shifting. You already feel the pull. This isn't coincidence, it's preparation. Do not be afraid to say yes to what calls you. Do not fear the trembling in your hands. That's not weakness, that's awareness. We tremble when we're close to the truth, when something sacred is about to be born. And I believe you are very, very close. So I'll leave you with this thought tonight. When the man arrives tomorrow, in whatever form he takes, don't just see him with your eyes. Feel him with your soul. Listen not to what he says, but to what your spirit hears, and ask yourself, what am I being called to choose now? Next, we will speak of the nature of timing, why he's arriving now, and why it could not have been any sooner. But for now, breathe, reflect, and be open. He is on his way, and so are you. The timing of tomorrow holds a deeper meaning than you think. Let us continue walking, together, toward the truth that is unfolding. You may be wondering, why now? Why is this moment, this arrival, this decision, coming tomorrow and not yesterday? Not next month? Not next year? There is a mystery to timing, a divine intelligence that moves through our lives, often unnoticed, but always precise. And here's what I've learned over the years. The soul never receives a moment before it is ready to respond to it. We like to think we're in control of our journeys, that we decide when something starts or ends. But have you noticed? The most transformative moments in your life, the ones that truly changed you, came when you weren't ready, but when you were ripe. Not ready, ripe. And there is a difference. Readiness is often about confidence. Ripeness is about surrender. Remember, a young novice once asked me, "Why did the Buddha sit under the Bodhi tree then? Why not earlier? Why not later?" And I told him, because truth doesn't grow by force. It flowers in stillness. That tree wasn't sacred because it gave him shelter. It was sacred because he was finally still enough to receive what had always been waiting. Tomorrow may be your Bodhi tree, that moment of ripeness, that crossroad you've sensed but haven't had the courage to face. But timing isn't just about you, it's also about others. You see, the man who is arriving, he isn't only on a mission to awaken you. He too has a journey. He too has questions. He too is searching. Sometimes you're not the lesson. You're the mirror, and in reflecting his truth, you'll discover your own. I've learned this from the countless souls who have entered my life, not to teach me what I wanted, but to show me what I didn't know I was ready to face. So, what? If you are his arrival, what if the moment is not just about your decision, but about your presence guiding someone else to theirs? We are all divine messengers, sometimes without even realizing it. And so often we spend our lives waiting for a grand sign, a bold voice from the sky, when in truth, God whispers through people, through timing, through interruptions, through the stranger who looks you in the eye and reminds you of something you've forgotten. I met a man once who had been searching for purpose for decades. He had climbed mountains, read scriptures, meditated for hours each day. But it wasn't until he helped a crying child find her mother in a crowded street that he realized something profound. I was waiting for a calling, but my calling was waiting for me to stop looking and start living. The man who is arriving tomorrow may not look like a guru. He may not speak wise words. But if you are present, if your heart is open, you will feel the sacredness of the moment. Not. And yet, recognition alone is not enough. You must also have the courage to say yes. That's the next part of the journey. Not just listening, but responding. Because here is a truth I must share with you, and I offer it gently, like a seed on your palm. You are always choosing, even in your silence, even in your hesitation, even in your delay. You are always saying yes to something, or saying no to something sacred. I remember a woman who came to the temple and told me she had missed her moment. She had been invited to speak, to lead, to share a truth that only she knew. But she said no, out of fear, out of self-doubt, out of the belief that someone else was more worthy. Years later, that opportunity never returned, but something else did. A quiet ache, not regret, but a lesson that every no we give to life leaves behind a question. What would have happened if I had just believed in myself for one more second? So I ask you now, gently, with love. When this man, this moment, arrives, will you have the courage to say yes, to speak the truth you've been rehearsing in your dreams, to take the first step into the unknown, to forgive the person you swore you never would, to open the door, even if your hands still shake? Yes is not the absence of fear. It's the presence of alignment. I've said it before, and I will say it again. You do not need to be fearless. You only need to be willing. Willing to follow the thread, to show up even when you feel broken, to trust that something wiser is guiding you, even when you can't see the full path. This is how you honor sacred timing, not by being perfect, but by being present. The man arrives tomorrow, but in truth, he is already here, in your awareness, in your breath, in this moment, this now. The invitation has been sent, the decision approaches, and all that remains is your willingness to meet it. In the next part of our journey, we will speak of what happens after the yes, the sacred unfolding that comes when you choose to step into your decision, and how that choice changes the course of your life. But for now, let this wisdom settle. Place your hand on your heart and ask, what is life asking me, to say yes to right now? Because the answer is already within you. It always has been. Saying yes is not the end. It is the beginning. Let us continue forward, into the unfolding path that only reveals itself as we walk. You've come this far. You've listened. You've reflected. You've asked, am I ready to say yes? Am I truly prepared for what tomorrow brings? And now, I want to ask you something deeper. What happens after the yes? What becomes of you when you choose, not with certainty, but with trust? Let me tell you a story. There was once a farmer who found a wounded bird on his field. Its wing was broken. It could not fly. He brought it inside, fed it, cared for it, never expecting anything in return. Days passed, then weeks, and the bird remained. It began to sing, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. One day, the bird's wing healed. It could finally fly again. The farmer opened his hands and said, "You are free." And the bird did something unexpected. It flew in a circle, then returned to perch on his shoulder. Because freedom, once given, always returns to love. That is what happens after the yes. When you set something sacred in motion, it returns to you in ways you cannot imagine. I have seen people say yes to forgiveness, and years of silence transformed into reunion. I have seen people say yes to purpose, and watch their whole identity dissolve, only to find a deeper self waiting beneath the masks. I have seen people say yes to grief, and instead of breaking, they discovered their hearts were made of rivers, always moving, never destroyed. So when you say yes, expect the unraveling, expect the undoing, expect to meet yourself, again and again and again. Because every sacred decision rearranges the universe around you. That man who arrives tomorrow, he is not the only one changing paths. You are too. And this decision, this one you never expected, it may not come with clarity, but it will come with momentum. Let yourself be carried by it. Don't resist the river, surrender to the current, because the truth is, you've already changed. By contemplating this message, by staying with this conversation, by breathing through the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. The monk in me sees the soul in you, and the soul in you is not who you were an hour ago. After the yes, you will begin to notice the world responds differently, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You'll hear the wind whisper wisdom. You'll notice people looking to you with new eyes. You'll begin to attract moments that mirror your bravery. And the man who comes tomorrow? He might deliver a message, or he might simply reflect something you've forgotten to honor in yourself, that you are worthy of this moment, worthy of saying yes, worthy of the unfolding. I want you to remember this. The universe is never trying to trap you in indecision. It is inviting you to trust yourself enough to make a choice that echoes with soul. And once you do, once you lean into the unknown, you will discover that fear was never the enemy. It was simply the guardian at the gate of your next evolution. Tomorrow is not a threat. It is a threshold, a door you have always been meant to walk through. But doors don't open by themselves. They open when you knock, when you arrive, when you say, I am willing. And so, you stand now at the edge. You've heard the message. You've felt the call. You've prepared your heart. And in the final part of our journey together, we will talk about what lies beyond the threshold. how to walk with the decision you've made, how to stay anchored in your truth when the world trembles, and how to live a life guided not by fear, but by wisdom, stillness, and sacred presence. Because your story isn't ending, it is just beginning. With one yes, the door stands. Before you now, will you walk through it? Let us finish this journey together, where courage becomes peace and decision becomes destiny. And now, we arrive at the still point. The place beyond questions, beyond seeking, beyond waiting. You've walked beside me through the forest of doubt, through the valleys of timing, across the rivers of recognition, and now, we sit here, at the beginning of everything. This is not the end of the story. It is the still breath before the first step forward. You have made a decision. Whether you whispered it in your heart or shouted it to the stars, you've chosen to listen, to awaken, to respond. And that, my dear one, is everything. People think that change comes in grand moments, but most of the time, change happens in stillness, in the pause before action, in the quiet yes whispered under your breath. That man who arrives tomorrow, he was never a stranger. He is a part of your destiny, but more importantly, he is a reflection of you, the part of you that's ready to rise, to serve, to remember who you really are. I once asked my teacher, Master, how will I know I'm walking the right path? He said nothing for a long time. Then he touched the ground with his palm and whispered, when your feet touch the earth and your heart feels peace, you are home. That is how you know. You know by your peace. By the way the world softens when you show up as your full self, by how the people around you start to heal, just by being near your presence. That is the real path. Not loud, not always clear, but sacred, and yours. So, what now? You go back into your life, into your conversations, your work, your decisions. But this time you walk differently. More rooted, more present, more willing to choose the deeper path, even when the easier one stands open. Let the moments ahead be shaped not by fear, but by remembrance. Remembrance of what matters, of what lasts, of what your soul came here to do. You are not here by accident. You didn't find this message by coincidence. And that decision you never expected? It may shape the rest of your life, in ways you won't even see yet. But that's the beauty of the sacred path. It unfolds as you walk. You don't need to know every step. You only need to be present for the next one. May you walk gently, but with courage. May you honor your timing, but not hide behind it. May your yes be bold, even if it trembles. May you trust that what comes next is not beyond your strength, but because of your strength. And may you remember, always, that within, use the answer you've been seeking all along. The man arrives tomorrow, and now you are ready. Not because you have every answer, but because you are finally listening to the voice within. Go in peace. Go with presence. Go knowing that your journey has already begun, and that your yes was the key you've held in your hands all along.